Okay, today we'll see how we can work with web services. So first, before going with web services, what we need to understand here is a little bit about understanding about the XSD. Why we need to use the XSD? XSD stands for XML Schema Definition. Why we need to use XSD is XSD will be specifying the types. XSD will be using the XSD will be specifying the types. When I say types, it's a structure of the request and response. So it can be a request, and response. So we can specify the request and response structure basically using the XSD most of the times in the SOAP web services. XSD is a metadata about the XML. So XSD basically will cause a will specify its XSD stands for XML schema definition, and it is a metadata about the XML structure. And it has XSD, right? So if you want to validate XML against if you want to validate XML against a schema, so schema is earlier, right? We do have two options for validating XML. If you want to validate an XML, right, we have two options. One is DTD, document type definition. Other one is XSD. But the thing is that the DTD and XSD, right, these are two different file formats. And DTD is nothing but it's a document type definition. It is also one kind of a definition that can specify the structure of your XML. But the problem with this DTD is it has very limited data types. You don't have much data types. But when it comes to XSD, it can support a huge number of primitive data types like int, double int, unsigned, signed, then small int, all primitive data types, whatever is available, integer, float, boolean, true, all these things is sufficient. But whereas in right, it's a PC data, there are limited 1-2 data types only available, and even you cannot extend the schema, the DTD also. The advantages with this one XSD is it can support n number of more primitive data types are there. So when you have a primitive data types, you can specify the structure and validations accordingly. Let's say you want to specify an order number. Order number might be a combination of alphanumeric characters, and then it might be some pattern will be there. So you can, if you have a data types available, right, you can apply more restrictions. Maybe you can just specify something like when order number is a 10-digit character, right? 10 characters as there. Maybe you can just specify first 3 characters, something like maybe alphabets, and other 7 characters would be digits. Maybe we can just specify something 4 digits, and remaining 3 digits would be some characters, maybe something like dashes, something like that. So we can, if order number is not complaining with this, not associated with this format, then we can have an option when we are validating XML against the schema. It automatically gets rejected, saying that as per the schema definition, schema is nothing but it has all the rules about your XML, how you want to define, what could be the structure of your XML, what is the each and every element name, and how many times that element should be repeated, and what is the element data type for each type. Even though if it is a string is coming, is there any restrictions on string? It may be number of characters, or any pattern is there, or it's a list of values, something like enumeration. You can specify all these options, and moreover you can specify the XSD is XSD is also an XML file. It's basically also an XML file. So it's, you have an extensible, as XML stands for extensible markup language. With this XSD, what you can do is you can extensible you can extend your existing definition. It means that you might have you can define something like parent and child relationship. You can define something like parent and child relationship. When I say parent and child relationship, you can define generally in real time how they'll be maintained. Most of the times is all the common. There is a one schema called common schemas. All types will be mentioned here. All the types in the same. Each type have there is certain parameters are there. Each field will be having the some value the way how I give order number, there are few parameters will be there. All these restrictions, maybe my country code should be only 2 characters, and pin code should be only 60 characters, and city should be only 5 characters, something like that. There might be all restrictions will be there. So if anybody design it, organization specific, right? So you can define one commonly used all generally for bank any other domains, right? Domain specific all possible types will be defined it here, so that no need to any new requirement comes, any new service is getting designed. In that case, you don't need to worry about the types. You just need to refer from this. So you'll refer it as a common schemas in one file. Maybe common schemas.xsd something. Generally, XSD files all will be have an extension called .xsd. So the XSD is an XML. For XML, it's an extension will be .xml file. For XSD, it is a .xsd. For DTD, it will be a .tdd. Okay, something like that. So you can specify common XSD as maybe child element, and you can specify the actual service name. Service name.xsd. It may be having the service name has the root element, and corresponding child elements will be there. So you can refer the common child schema in the parent schemas using the two options will be there. One is import option will be there. Other one is include option is there. These are the two parameters. Maybe if you might have gone through yesterday for the XSD, you might have get to know that what is import, what is XSD. So if you want import and include will be the main intention of this import and include will be making the child elements or the types or elements that you define in the child other schema can be make it available and can use in this one. So that's the main. But when it comes to a difference, right? So import is basically it's a part of when both child has different namespaces, different target namespaces, then you need to use import. If it is the same one, you can use the include. Other than this, remaining everything will be different. So both purpose would be making elements or types defined in one schema available in other schema. That's the main intention, main purpose of the both import and include. As a name, as you know, that XSD, right? How you can define, there might be, same elements might be there in multiple schemas. Let's say you might have ID is there here. Maybe maybe you have a order, maybe order ID will be there. You might have also something like order number or order ID will be there. Maybe something like you can say request and response. The request also have a order ID, response also order ID. Right? So you should not define duplicate elements always. When you have duplicate elements, what you will do, you will associate some kind of an identifier to know that, okay, this part would belongs to request, this ID belongs to response. How you can identify that? Using the basically we'll call it as a fully qualified name. Fully qualified name. In Java, generally what you will use, you will fully qualified name. And if the same method or something is defined more than one classes, what you will do, you will give the package name as a fully qualified name. Package name as a fully qualified name. Similar to the Java, right? So in the XML, you will call it as a target namespace. It's basically to resolve the conflict between when you have more than one element with the same name. So to avoid the conflict between the multiple elements from across the different schema or within the schema, basically you will specify that in target namespace. And namespace can be anything. It can be anything. It's just something like follows a naming convention like XMLNS. XMLNS stands for XML namespace. Then it has a naming convention like something like XMLNS. Then some prefix will be there. Maybe if you don't want to specify prefix, then some naming convention will be there. Anything can be. Okay, I'm just writing something. And then if you want to refer everything, you can just mention something like prefix. Something, it may be order ID means or something, it can be something like that. But always, this can be anything. This can be you can type your name, but general thing, what value will be specified is it's specified as a URL format. In most of the cases in real time, what they mentioned is they'll make this particular value as an URL of your repository. Wherever you might be using some SVN or something like that, you might be hosting that as some particular place, they'll give that URL so that when they click the URL, it will be available. But if you don't make your file available at that URL, it's not there. Just as a kind of a notation that URLs always will be unique. That's the only, but other than that, no need to manually use that. This is the one target namespace, what I mean to say. I'll open a simple XSD and I'll go through what exactly I mean to say, import and include all these things. and what I mean to be types and what I mean to be that, then we'll get into the jump into the web services. First, let me open that sample XSD. You can just open anything here. Okay, here you can see an XML. First, you can see the XML, and then you corresponding you can see the XSD how it looks like. In XSD, sorry, let me open this one. You can use the XML so that will make available colorful. So you can see that SHIP2 is the only one root element. Under that, these are the child elements will be there. You can see that here you can call it as this element as a complex element, and or even you can call it as a root element, so that one root element will be there for XML, so that this for XML and corresponding open tag closing tags are there, and this is a simple element, and this is a complex. Simple element means there is no other child elements except the text value. This is a complex element. Why? Because it has a multiple child elements are there. So it has this is also one complex element, but this is a more than this is occurrence means only one time is present, but whereas the item can be present more than once. Okay, this is how it looks like XML. Now let's go for the corresponding XSD here. Let's go for the complete things here. Okay, maybe I can. So generally, how the XSD looks like is the way how you have an XML. Every XML have only single root element. Similarly, if you say any file, if any file is an XML, maybe XSD or schema, whatever it is, or Visdal, whatever, all these are basically XSLT file. All these things are in XML files. How any XML file, it should satisfy root element should be there. In schema, you always find this called schema. Okay, it's not manually. You may not be. Maybe let me give one more clarity about this schema. You may not need to create schemas manually from the scratch, the way how you look at from the source code point of view. But if you have a knowledge, it will be more advantage. Even you can the same thing what you are doing here. You can graphically do it in the Boomi as well. Okay, that we did earlier. But if you know these things, it will be more advantage when you need to do, because once we create schemas, the profiles in Boomi, right? You cannot share that across to other teams. But when you create the schemas using the XSDs, this can be shareable. This can be shareable to other persons. Okay. So for schemas, always root element will be this one. XML schemas will be there. Schema is a root element. After that, what is the element is there in our case? Ship order. What type of element? It's simple element or complex element? Simple element in the sense there is no child elements in between open and closed tag. So this is the open and closed tag. There is the right items are there. More than one elements are there. So we can say that this is a complex element. That's why whenever what is the element name here? Element name will be ship name. So in basically XSD, it will tell that what name should be there. What is the name, including case sensitive, should be present in XSD. The corresponding to XML should be there. Otherwise, it will throw an error. So that's why what is the element is there. This is a ship order is a root element. Okay. Let me define element here. This is how it looks like to define. Element name. What type of element this is? Complex element, right? It means it has more than one element. You will define complex element, right? Complex element. And what inside complex element you have more than one element, right? Then you by default, right? You might be specifying the sequence. First, it should come order person. Next, it should come SHIP2. Next, it should come item. So that's basically specify the sequence. Instead of sequence, you can specify any element if you don't want to make any element. If you don't want to follow any sequence, or even you can specify the choice element also. Maybe you can say either order person or a SHIP2 or billing address. Only one thing should be there. You can specify the choice. Sequence means all the elements should be present in between sequence, and it should follow the same sequence. Whereas if you specify the any, all the elements should be there, but you don't need to follow any sequence. Instead of sequence, if you see choice, means either of the one element should be there. Okay, so this is how it looks like. If you want to define the simple element is order person. There are no child elements, so you can just define element name. Element name is the order person, and every time you define element type, you need to specify the type corresponding type, whether it's simple type or complex type. If it is simple type, you need to refer from the simple types: string, integer, boolean, all this float, decimal, something like that. So if it is a complex type, you need to define something like this. And in between complex type, you need to define each and every element, and the corresponding types again you need to define. So this is how it elements. Now shift2 is a complex element. Yes, this is a complex element. Element name is shift2 and its type is complex type. So corresponding to opening tags and closing tags are there. In between complex type, I want to follow some sequence. More than one element is their name, address, city, country. So I'll follow some sequence. By default, sequence will be there. Compulsorily, you need to define either sequence or any or choice. Sequence means all the elements should be present in the same order. Any means all the elements should be present without any order. Choice means out of these all the elements, any one of them. Means choice is nothing but mutually exclusive. Any only one element should be there. So sequence. Now we already know how to define simple element. Element name. Name is type. Address is string. City is string. Country is string. This is how we need to define all these things. You can see. And one more thing is item. One more thing is item. Item here is repeatable. The same thing is repeatable more than once. It means by default, right? By default, whenever you define, there are the two parameters basically. That represents the max occurrence. Max occurrence, min occurrence. And by default, if you don't define any occurrences, right, the default value will be 1. Default value will be 1. So there are basically we'll call it as the possible combinations are there. Possible combinations are there. Optional element, or required element we can say, or repeatable element. Repeatable element. Something there is one more thing is there. Optional in the sense by default if you don't define in the sense what it means to say name is mandatory, address is mandatory, city is mandatory, country is mandatory because you don't see any elements max occurrence, minimum occurrence. So by default values will be 1. It means minimum max should occur once. Occur means presenting. Max it should available once. Minimum it should available once. It means always will be available. So if you don't define, this is how it values will be corresponding. Okay, it means if you, any XML file comes in between, if none of the any of the elements are not there, it throw an error. When you validate this XML corresponding to schema, right, it throw an error. Where do you specify schema? Yeah. If you save this file and you open the Internet Explorer, also Internet Explorer will go to this file path and it just verify whether the name is there or not. Even you can use the plugins to do that one also. Okay, but that is completely take a lot of time. You can just go through that. If you have any doubt, I can clarify that. And even you can use some other proprietary tools, Alto, other things. They have many inbuilt options for validating. So by default, when using a profile in maps or anything, right, whenever using profile element or map shape with XML or thing, by default it will validate the incoming data with the corresponding structure. When I say structure, it will be XSD or it can be profile. So it will be by default will be validated. Okay, now what I mean to be optional. So we left here optional in the sense. So there could be some elements, right? There could be some elements where you might be presenting some address information, right? Address you have, let's say address has a root element, something like that. Address 1, address 2, address 3, address 4, some address 3, city, state, country is there. So few customers might have address 1, address 2, address 3 information might be there. Few customer doesn't have address 2, address 3. So you cannot always make them that you always fill address 2, address 3. So that is, you can, even if address 2, address 3 is not also there, you should be fine. In that case, if you need to specify, that's called basically called the optional. You need to enter those values. So by default, its corresponding values will be something like corresponding values will be for optional in the sense you don't need to specify this one, but minimum occurrence you need to specify 0. It means by default, if you don't specify what is the value, this is a value. Mandatory in the sense this is a default value. You don't need to specify anything. By default, will be there. Mandatory or required element, you need to specify. If it is a repeatable element, you need to specify. This is the default option, right? You don't need to specify anything. This can be values will be 0. Valid values will be 1 or any integer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. Or you can say well, there is one special characters are there, unbounded. It means infinite number of times. If you don't know how many times it will get repeated, right? You need to specify unbounded. So in this case, item is the unbounded element. It can repeat any number of times. It can be valid. It can be still valid. That's why basically we'll call it as. And in this case, max occurrence will be always, if you don't specify anything, what happens, right? This is a value. It means items can be repeatable any number of times, but at least if you don't specify this one, at least it should be present once. Even if you make this one also 0, right? Especially, then if item is not present also fine. If it is present, it can be present one time or it can be more than one time. This is basically all this combination will be. If you don't specify anything, default values will be 1. It means always mandatory. This will come under mandatory. If you specify minimum occurrence, means minimum how many times it should present, 0 means no need to present. That's what basically called optional. If you say repeatable means more than once, right? Or how you can say more than once? It's a max occurrence should be more than once. Sorry, not minimum occurrence. This should be max. This means minimum how many times? Maximum you can occur 1, 5, 3, 4, 5, something like that. Any number of times can occur. But repeatable is 0. This is basically called as exclusive thing. If there is one more combination, if you don't specify this one, it should be present at least once. It can be present any number of times. Something like these are the possible combinations. Now you may get to know, if you look at complete schema, you will get to know this. Okay. Now the root element is ship order, and for that ship order, root element sub element will be as order person is a simple element, and it has ship to is a complex element. It corresponding elements are there. For item, since item is repeatable, you can see max occurrence is unbounded. You can see all these values. Okay, this is how it looks like schemas. But if you want to divide the schemas, right? As I mentioned that something like if you want to use import include options, right? You can define all the types you can here. The problem with this type, right? We already defined ship2, but since there is no name given for the type name, we cannot reusable this type name. Maybe if I want to present same field ship2 and build2, I don't want to define all these things, anything. I just want to define build2. Then I should able to position. If I able to reuse this one, then I can able to use the same one. So this is how it looks like, dividing the schema. Okay. In this one, they just define the elements. They did not tag it, which is a parent, which is a child element, nothing they did. Basically, we'll call it as a global declaration. Global declaration is just immediately after schema. We did not specify what is parent, what is child as of now. We just define it here. Again, defining complex element. So here, after defining, you will just refer it once. Refer means look for the definition. As of now, I'm just mentioning the refer the name. I don't know what is type. Type everything will go here and check the types. How they divide the schemas and everything. Using name types. As of now, we did not define any names here. But even you can define names and you can put it in another file as well. You can see you might have defined item type. You can use this one. So after that, you can just define. You want to define any simple types. You want to apply some pattern. You need to go this one. So it's a huge one. You can just go through this one. So this is what basically called XSD. Okay, if you want to see simple things for XSD import or include, then you can see the one. I know it will be a huge topic. That's why I told you to go through here yesterday. So you can see import syntax will be always import namespace will be there, location will be there. So let's say you can see how it looks like. You can import it. Import namespace. Maybe you can go through the other one, so it will be more easy. They didn't give much in this one. Okay, here you can see two target namespaces are defined. One target namespace my namespaces. This is common types, and the namespace will be other one. So if you see common types XSD is this one. So its target namespace will be common types. Value, you can see the value here. Namespace test.common.com common types. And this is the common types. These all types will be redefined in here. Customer types. You can see import in the common types will be there. So whatever the types defined in the common types, you can use in the customer types, something like that. Okay, that's how you can use the reusability option by defining the types once, and you can get the option of reusability. As the name says, if you define types with ship2 and build2 as the same structure, you can define what could be the elements of ship2 and ship2 as a one type reusable type. You can tag it to ship2, or you can tag it to build2. You can tag it to any other type of parameters. So this is called basically all these things. Now let's go for web services. See, main thing is why we use a main web services, right? Web services main as a name just no, as a name says, as a service. Web service. Service means you will provide some functionality. Okay, maybe let's say account service. Account service means you will give account ID or something. You will get all the account details or account summary, something you have different means. It means if when two different applications are communicating with each other, and if you don't know what would be the structure of, right, maybe let's say MS Paint, so it might be application 1, it could be application 2, could be application 2. So let's say client, we'll just call it as a client here. Client here, it would be a server. Okay. Maybe you can call this as a UI generally most of the times, or it can be any application. In this case, we'll just call it as a Boomi, something like that. Okay. So let's assume that you might be using you might be developed some service in Boomi that would be called in front end UI. Okay. Let's say the service called account details. Account details or account summary. Okay. Account summary service. Account summary service means for this request would be something like, you can give either account ID or customer ID. Response will get the complete structure, all the details of the complete account summary. Account summary spaces you might be specifying it. Let's say something. So here, right here, as a UI, what he will do is he will just call a service. He just call a service. Says that okay, I'll want to call the service. So I just need a request ID. If I pass account ID and customer ID, he don't know as a person who UI, the basically cause a client is nothing but who is going to use the service. Server is nothing but who is going to provide complete functionality. Okay. In this case, if you UI want to use a functionality called client, as a client want to use this service, he don't need to know what kind of a technology it is there, the service is implemented, what platform it is running, and which system it is connecting, how many systems are internal it connects to get all these required details. It doesn't know anything. All complete things is in abstraction about the complete services. Everything will be on behind screen. Now what you know exactly is, as a UI, if I pass account ID or customer ID, I'll get these things. How you are passing? You will just you specify some kind of a URL, basically URL, HTTP URL, and in the request you might be passing these things, and you will get the response. You don't need to bother about these things, where the server is running, where your service is running, what kind of a technology is being implemented, what kind of functionality is being exposing, how many systems it internally connecting. All you don't need to know all these things. Everything will be abstracted. It means, as a name web service, you are making one service available on web. Generally things web service in the sense, application here UI is one application, Boom is another application. Two applications will be communicating via internet. How you will communicate? There is no direct connection here. Everything will be communicated on the internet here. Everything will be communicated on the internet here. So there is no direct connectivity here. So everything will be communicated internet. You will just pass a request, you will get the response. So how you will pass, since it is passing through request, right, as an internet, so there is a huge possibility of tampering your data, something like that. That's where the concepts came. Say HTTPS, security. S stands for security. So this one, right? So why do we need to implement web services? Why can't I use any other mechanism? The advantage with this one is you, once you send a request, right, immediately you will get the response. Once you send a request, it means whenever you want to do some kind of a real-time things, you will get the response. Maybe if you just log in into web service, internet banking, if you just click on account summary tabs or account summary, if you click on something account number, if you say okay, you click on now, I'll give you the response. Maybe I'll send you an email, something. Then how it looks to the customer experience. If you click now, if I immediately show you the response, how it looks like, feel and good. That's where the web service basically is. Whenever you need immediate response, it means this is request and response. It means basically called as a synchronous. And as a synchronous means Until this request is being processed, the corresponding job will be, everything will be on hold. So it means that main advantage with this thing is one application, another application is exposing this application, right? It may be, let's say, Boomi internally using something like maybe some other application for getting these things like, mainframe. Generally, if you talk about mainframe, it has a mainframe backend will be there, or Finacle will be there, something like these are the backend system. Boomi it connects, and it'll Boomi has exposed one services to get to simplify it to be used by the front end. In this case, what exactly client need to know is, client need to know only few details. What is the where service is available? It means endpoint, or even we can call it as a endpoint URL. Basically, we'll call it as a endpoint URL. And what is a request? What is a response structure? If you know client, if you know only these details, right, then you don't need to forget about other things. You'll get all these things. That's how the web service makes simplifies. Don't it's everything is be everything will be interoperable format. So one system can be let's say here the server is a application server Boomi is exposing the functionality and making this functionality say available over the internet, making available the services over internet. So client, whoever want the services, they can just use that URL and they can send the request, so they'll get the response. That's how basically how the request and response will be there. Everything will be there. Where endpoint URL is there. That's where there is one standardized format called WSDL is there. WSDL is there. WSDL nothing but web services description language. The W stands for web. It stands for service. D stands for description. L stands for language. The way how you have for XML, you have schema is there. For web services also, you need to know few details. Endpoint URL, whether it will be synchronous or asynchronous. Asynchronous means for request you will have a response. For asynchronous, you will have only request, no response. And where the service is running, whether at which host and port number, all these things will be there in WSDL. Client exactly need only this one. What is the location? What is the request and response? What's the service name? That's all client need. So to make this data available as a standardized to the client, there is a standardized concepts called WSDL. The WSDL will be having all these details. Now let me just go through this one. Sample WSDL. So it have very simple sample WSDL. Okay, let's go to this. Wait, let me make very thing simple. WSDL. Actually, huge topic. That's why I know it take some time. So for WSDL, right, sample WSDL, you can see there is, okay, now let me make these things notepad, so that will be more clarity will be there. So now for the way how schema for XSD, the root element will be WSDL also an XML file. So when I say any XML file, it should follow well-formed XML. It means should have only one root element. So it's have a definition is a root element. And in that definition, the messages, when I say messages, it could be a request, it could be a response. It depends upon the where exactly you're using. Here the message, you can see get endorsing border. This is the one element. Another thing is get, you can see that. So this element is using in this message. Get endorsing border request, get endorsing border response. For every request and response are fault. So when I say synchronous, right? If you know, if for the request, you can get the response if everything is success. If it something is getting failed, maybe a server is trying to connect to Finacle downstream system or mainframe, something you'll get an error. In that you will get the fault. For one request, you'll get only one response. For one request, you can get n number of possible faults. One fault may be connectivity error, other fault will be an insufficient data. You can define any number of faults, but any point of time you will get only one fault. Okay, it doesn't matter whether a request, a response, a fault, everything you need to define as a message. This is the message. It internally uses all the schema elements here. Another thing is next thing will be a port type. Port type in the sense it, okay, first before going to port type, you can just understand the operation. Operation in the sense it is exactly the service, what exactly it is doing. This is a service name. It is a service name. Maybe let's say a simple things called contact service. Okay, Contact service. Contact service, let's say you have many things you can do. You can, let's say, create contact, delete contact, like this. It means each and everything will be one piece, but everything is all belongs to one stream. So this is here also, each and everything, create contact, update contact, delete contact, all these things will be one operation. You can say one operation will be create contact, one operation will be update contact, one operation will be delete contact. Each operation corresponding to what could be the request, input nothing but request, output nothing but response. Okay. So in this case, in our Boomi, what we will do, for every operation we will specify one process, and process will be having the request is in request XML profile, response XML profile will be there. Now all these things will be grouped. It all belongs to one contact related, so that's why we'll call it contact service. It basically kind of a grouping. Port type is nothing but just group of operations. It can be in one operation, can be more than one operation as well. Something like, even it can be like this also. After that, binding. Okay, you just define your service in Boomi or somewhere any other application, how you want make this particular service to be available. Because SOAP is the one, it's right, it's just a data protocol. You cannot carry the information from one place to another place. So SOAP is nothing but basically all the web service implemented on two protocols. One is SOAP protocol, other one is HTTP protocol. So web service will be. So protocol is a data protocol actually. How you want to represent the data, it will specify that. HTTP protocol specifies it's a transfer protocol. You want to move the data from one place to another place. When I say you want to move the data from client to server, server to client, in that case you will use a HTTP protocol. It means you are making a SOAP protocol as a data and using HTTP for transfer purpose. So as of now, we specified how your request and response, everything will be specified here. What will be request and response? You specify how you want to bind the SOAP to a transfer protocol. That will basically goes here binding. The binding, you specify the transfer protocol would be an HTML. You can use some other protocols like JMS, Java Messaging Service, other protocols also available, but most of the times you use the HTTP one. And service is the last thing, will be a service here. Service in the sense where exactly your service will be located. What's the host number, port number? You can see the service will be hosted here. If you are specifying host number, some kind of this basically not a host, alias name will be there. In this alias, it will definitely goes to host and port number will be there. So this is how it looks like. Visual will be there. By looking at visual, what we need to know, how many operations it is exposed, how many operations exposed, what's the corresponding request and response, where the service, what kind of binding is there, whether it's so HTTP protocol, any other protocol, and where your service is available. If you know these things, you can able to build your SOAP service. Okay. Before building the things, what we need to know is how we'll implement, how make these things happen in Boomi. Okay. So these things happen in Boomi is if you want to expose your service. When I say expose your service, you want to build this part. Okay. If you want to build this part, right? What you need to do is you need to create for every operation in a visual. Okay. In visual, what you need to do, you need to have one process whose start type, start shape should have web service server, and it should have the return shape. Return shape is basically used for return the data, or you can say sending the response. You need to have this one at least. Have one process for every operation. If you have create contact, one process. Update contact, you have one. Making the process for making the things available, right? For making the things available as a web services, you need to use the start shape as a web service server connector. That's all you need to do. If the service is everything is available, right? If you make start shape as a web service server connector, then if you deploy the service, then your process is available as a web services. You can just hit with the service name. So now let's see a simple thing. How we'll show you that. How will show you the service? Okay. Now let me. What I will going to do is we already have a list of customers is there. First thing is I'll define two operations. Okay, two operations. One thing would be list of customers, and other one is a customer by ID. Means first thing is it will retrieve all the customers from your database. Other one is by passing each customer, it will give the complete details about the customer. These are these are two operations that are going to do. So first thing is it will be a very similar operation. Nothing I'm doing. I'll just go and do the SQL database queries. First, I'll make one thing available. Then I'll add other part. It will be quickly will be done. So let's go for the demo process here. Now what we will do is let me start the DB. Day. Okay, now let's my data service is there. So now let me just go for the list of get all customers. Get all customers. So forget about start shape now, because we need to make our service available. Then we'll make the things. We'll concentrate on service a functionality. If we are able to retrieve list of customers, then we make this thing as a web services. Okay. First thing is you want to retrieve list of customers. What we need is connector, database connector. Okay. Now we already have everything is there. We just need to use that database. Get is the one we want to execute select query here. MariaDB new is there. So let's say customer get operation. Now let me see if anything is there defined as a select query here. Okay, nothing is there. So that's all. Okay, now I'll just use the return shape here. So return shape, right? If you don't use any web service server connector, it's there is a two functionalities of return shape. One would be when you're using a child process, and if you want to return anything from child process to parent process, you'll use return shape. Other thing is when you are using a web services scenarios, if you want to return a response, you'll use a return shape. Now let me, if since in this case there is no parent process and there is no there is no web services, the return shape will do nothing functionality. There is no, I can say even if it is not there also, there is no useful. It just shows a no functionality. So now first we'll see whether the data is available or not first. Okay, the data is available now. Okay, it's there, some data is written. Okay, now what I need to use, I just need to use the whatever earlier we are using. I just want to, because it's not much readable, I want to return the data in XML format. Now let me see, we might have already have the XML map is there. Okay, now let me just see whether data is available or not properly. And one thing is, for web services process, we cannot test in local. Okay, for web services process, we cannot test in local. So we need to use we after deploying the processes, then we can do the testing part. So if you want to do kind of web services testing, right, we have many tools are available in the market. You can generally most of the times you use a SOAP UI. SOAP UI is a tool that will be used as a, if you want to see something like SOAP UI is a tool they'll use for testing your web services most of the time. Even you can use Postman also nowadays, you can use it most of the times. Postman can use for test and so. Now you can see, first let me see the service is available or not. Okay, now you can see I'm able to retrieve the data. Now make these things as a web services. Now you want to make services as a web services, as I mentioned. First thing is make this thing as a web services server connector. It's an always action should be listen. You might have heard so till now get and send, but the action will be listen. Action listen means since once you deploy the process, it keep on looks whether any request has been hit or not. That's called basically listening. You don't need to start the process. You cannot start the processes manually. Or if your action is listen, process by default will be started as soon as you deployed it. Now I want to define that, and the services, right? Settings will be managed at atom management level. I'll show you this thing. First thing is define the operation. When I say operation here, this operation to the what we are discussing about the here operation. So you will have the input means request profile, response profile will be there. Now let me define this is operation type. What could be your operation name here? Something like it will go here. Get all customers. Okay, this is the one. Expected input would be single. As of now, for this particular one, there is no need request structure. I only require the response structure. Okay, you can specify single XML object. We can specify this is the response what we specified here. Okay, I am using the same one. Okay, now get all customers web service server connector OP. Simple, making it much simpler. WSS stands for web service server connector. Okay, you can see now. Save and close. Okay. Okay, now you are able to do this. Will you be able to test? You can see does not currently support testing of this one. So what we can do is let me deploy this one. Okay, view deployment. Select checkbox this one, development, save and deploy. Okay, you just click on that, so it automatically gets deployed. If you want to use now, right? Okay, now where do you find the settings here is you can select this. Yes, this is deployed. If you see this entry, it is deployed. Now go to atom management, open this new tab. As I mentioned right here, you don't see an option called settings, right? These settings will be there. You need to, as I mentioned, if you want to trigger for client, what you need the request and response. For this particular service, you don't need to send any request. So you don't need to anything expecting from customer. So what you need, the last thing is you need an endpoint URL. Where do you find the endpoint URL is? We'll show you here. I deployed on this one here. Let's go to shared web server. This is the host name and port number. Okay, this is a host name and port number. Now go to the Postman here. Postman is the one. It's a Chrome extension. Okay, it's a Chrome extension. Since you deployed Atom on 2 atoms, right? Even you can use this one also. Test.connect.boomi.com. You're always your host name. Something will be. This is the host name. Host name. Okay, and then you will call it this as a request URI from after this slash onwards. So this is our host name. Okay, request URI would be. Where do you find the request URI? This is the request URI. You need to club these things. Okay. Request URI. This is your URL. If you just trigger this, you will get the response. We'll show you this one. You can just use this one. Okay, you by default use the get option, and if you enable this one, right? So if you go to here, user basic means you basically need the authentication. Okay, so if you use this one, so you will get it as a, this is user management will be, this one will be there. Go to basic authentication, specify this one, and for token you just click on copy password, and that's all. Update request, you will get header will be there. It means you specified it. It means for security purpose, right? So anybody can always click on save since you did something. Okay, you should click only save. You should not click generate. Only first time you click on generate. It means what you do, you know the URL. If since it is security purpose cloud, you already secured with basic one. So username password you entered. Under users tab you will have users. Token will be a password. Now you entered this one. Now we are ready to test this one. So after you are ready to test, you will see the service is returned or not. Click on send now. You can say loading. You should get some response here. What the response? The one when we run the local without configuring the start chip, similar thing you should get the response now. But initially, right, it takes some time. Let's wait for the response. Okay, it says that problem accessing WS simple get all customers. Error retrieving data. Okay, since I am using a DB one, right? So it will not allow me to ask because DB is not enabled on local. So let me just use this one. So authentication will be a none. Host number, port number, authentication no need here. Okay, now let's click on this one. Because since I deployed this atom and for this particular environment, right? This environment has a two attachment, two atoms are there. So I can use a local atom. This one, this is cloud atom. This is a local atom. So my DB is accessible from the local atom. You can see now I send a request here. You can see how the request is sent. The host name. This is a host name. Host name is a port number, and this is a basic authorization. And after that, this is the one request is sent, and this is the response. You can see the response, right? Content type is applications/XML. You will get all the response. List of customers, you get the response. So this is a one way for testing your web services from the tools. There might be cases you might need to use in Boomi. That part we'll see tomorrow. How we can do the same thing. Whatever we did it here, right? It means what we did is now client is Postman is a tool for triggering. Who is using this service? Client means Postman. Now what is server? Server is Boomi here. I mean who server is who hosting the service. Service is called basically server. So tomorrow what we will do is we'll make these two things as a Boomi. Means I will use Boomi for consuming the service and the same expose as Boomi. I'll see this part tomorrow. I think it takes definitely a long time. So this you will have some if you don't practice it tomorrow, it will be very confusing, but it will take you time and practice it. Okay, then we'll close this today. So what we learned finally is we were able to create a web services and deploy the web service and test it from the Postman. That's all we learned today.
Okay.
Okay. Shall we'll see.
So Postman, we need to install it beforehand.
You can use this one, right? You can Google Chrome softwares, or else what you will do, right? You can just go here, extend. Okay, more tools, developer tools, or extensions. You can go anything. You can download.
Okay.
Search for Postman, you'll get it. Just click on. Initially, it asks for install something. You just install. It no need any password, something like that. It just the browser it will get installed. You can just click on this. Then just need to click on that one, so it automatically gets opened. You can see when you click on this, it will automatically gets opened. It's already there. Launch up. It won't ask you if you want to use this account anywhere, right? You can log in. Otherwise, you can skip the login. Initially, it asks for login. You can even skip this login.
Okay. Then we need to configure this on Atom.
Yes, you need to deploy your services on the Atom. How can you know whether the service is deployed? To go to this Atom under listeners, you should see the process, the one which deployed it. Okay, and even the deployed process also you can see. Since it is a listener based things here, right? This is listen based, so it is listed under listen. Otherwise, the default it is deployed listed on the deployed process. Since it is a listener, you can see on both the level.
Okay.
This should be there. If you don't, this one is there because when you hit the request here, right? You hit the request here, the request is coming here and the process is executing here. After the request is accepted as start shape, it's connecting to DB and returning this. This is a return. It's going to display here.
Okay. Yeah, let me practice today so that I can come across any issues. So I'll let you know.
So tomorrow we'll see having how we can add one more operation, how we can consume the same thing from the Boomi, and also show you how we can retrieve the wisdom. But the one wisdom explained here, right? Wisdom, I'll show you how we can retrieve this thing information from Boomi.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so we'll meet tomorrow then.